Imagine it's 2005. You're standing in a crowded room. Half the people are carrying bulky plastic bricks with monochromatic screens. The legendary Nokia 3310s or 1100s. But then, someone pulls out a sleek, vibrant device with a dedicated shutter button and a glowing orange logo. It doesn't just make calls, it takes photos that look like actual memories, and it plays music with the clarity of a dedicated MP3 player. In that moment, Nokia, the undisputed king of the mobile world, felt a cold shiver down its spine. That device was a Sony Ericsson. It wasn't just a phone, it was a lifestyle, a status symbol, and for a brief glowing window in history, it was the Nokia Killer. But if they were so good, where are they now? Why did the brand that invented the Walkman phone and the Cybershot phone vanish into the shadows of tech history? Welcome back to Master Plan. Today, we are dissecting the DNA of a fallen titan. We're going deep into the boardroom battles, the legendary innovations, and the fatal mistakes that turned a dream partnership into a cautionary tale. Grab your headphones because this is the story of the rise and fall of Sony Ericsson. Chapter 1. The Marriage of Necessity. To understand the end, we have to go back to the beginning. The year is 2000. The mobile market is dominated by Nokia and Motorola. Sony, a Japanese powerhouse in electronics, is struggling to make its mobile handsets relevant. Meanwhile, Ericsson, a Swedish telecommunications giant, is reeling from a massive fire at their Philips chip factory in New Mexico, which crippled their production. Ericsson had the infrastructure and the radio technology. Sony had the design flair and the consumer electronics cool factor. On October 1st, 2001, they shook hands. It was a 50-50 joint venture. The goal? Simple. Take down Nokia. For the first year, it was rocky. But then came the T610 in 2003. It featured a color screen, a built-in camera, and a design so sleek it made Nokia's candy bar phones look like prehistoric tools. This was the moment the world realized that a phone could be a fashion statement. Chapter 2. The Golden Era, Walkman and Cybershot. Now let's talk about why you, the audience, probably love this brand. Sony Ericsson didn't just sell phones, they sold sub-brands. In 2005, they did something genius. They looked at Sony's legendary portfolios and thought, why not put a Walkman inside a phone? Enter the W800. It was bright orange, it came with high-quality in-ear buds, and it had a dedicated button for music. Suddenly, the iPod had a real competitor that could also send texts. Then came the Cybershot series, like the K800i. While Nokia was focusing on business tools, Sony Ericsson was putting xenon flashes and autofocus lenses into pockets. They owned the multimedia crown. Master plan question for you. Do you remember your first Sony Ericsson? Was it a W series or a K series? Let me know in the comments because, for many of us, the W810i was the first time we ever felt cool holding a piece of tech. Chapter 3. The Peak and the Hidden Cracks. By 2007, Sony Ericsson was at its absolute zenith. They were shipping over 100 million handsets a year. Their profits were soaring. They were the third largest handset maker in the world. They felt invincible. But behind the scenes, the 50-50 partnership was becoming a cage. Sony and Ericsson were two companies with completely different cultures. Sony was focused on sleek consumer design and proprietary tech. Remember the memory stick duo? That annoying little card that only worked in Sony products? Ericsson was a hardware and infrastructure company focused on the guts of the network. Every decision required approval from both Tokyo and Stockholm. While they were arguing over logistics and proprietary memory cards, a storm was brewing in Cupertino, California. Chapter 4. The 2007 Earthquake. On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs stood on a stage and introduced the iPhone. At first, Sony Ericsson executives laughed. It has no physical keypad, they said. The battery is sealed, they mocked. They believed their specialized Walkman and Cybershot phones would hold the line. But they missed the fundamental shift. The world no longer wanted a phone that did one thing well, like taking photos. They wanted a pocket computer that did everything. Nokia failed because they clung to their aging Symbian OS. Sony Ericsson suffered from the same disease. They tried to use the UIQ interface, a complicated, clunky version of Symbian. While Apple was giving users pinch to zoom and a seamless app store, Sony Ericsson users were still struggling with laggy menus and a lack of third-party apps. Chapter 5. The Android Gamble. Realizing Symbian was a sinking ship, Sony Ericsson turned to a new savior: Android. In 2010, they released the Xperia X10. It was beautiful. It had a massive screen for the time and a 1 GHz processor, but it launched with an outdated version of Android 1.6, and Sony Ericsson's custom skin, called Timescape, was so heavy it slowed the phone to a crawl. This is where the identity crisis became fatal. They were trying to be a premium brand like Apple, but they were using software they didn't control, and their hardware was being undercut by a rising star from South Korea: Samsung. Samsung moved faster. Samsung spent more on marketing. Samsung embraced Android fully, while Sony Ericsson was still trying to figure out if they were a Swedish radio company or a Japanese camera company. Chapter 6. The Divorce. By 2011, the marriage was over. The 50-50 split was no longer working. Sony realized that if they wanted to survive in the smartphone era, they needed total control. They needed to integrate the phone with their PlayStation consoles, their Bravia TVs, and their movie studios. In October 2011, Sony announced they were buying out Ericsson's share of the venture for 1.05 billion euros. The Ericsson name was scrubbed from the handsets. The famous green liquid energy logo, which many of us still find nostalgic, began to fade away. From 2012 onwards, the devices would simply be called Sony Xperia. Chapter 7. Why the rebrand didn't save them. You might think that having Sony in total control would fix everything. It didn't. Sony suffered from what business historians call the silo effect. The camera division didn't want the phone division to have the best sensors because they feared it would hurt sales of their actual cameras. The PlayStation division didn't want to give full game access to the phones. By the time Sony started acting like one unified company, the market was gone. Apple and Samsung had formed a duopoly at the top, and Chinese brands like Huawei and Xiaomi were eating the mid-range market for breakfast. Chapter 8. The Legacy of a Ghost. So, where did Sony Ericsson go? It didn't exactly die. It evolved into the modern Sony mobile division, which today focuses on a very tiny niche market of professional photographers and cinephiles with the Xperia 1 and 5 series. But the spirit of Sony Ericsson, that bold, experimental, let's put a speaker on a phone energy, is gone. They were the pioneers of mobile music. Long before Spotify, they made the phone our primary music player. Mobile photography. They pushed megapixels and optics when Nokia was still focused on Snake. Waterproofing. They were among the first to make flagship phones you could drop in a pool. Master plan analysis. Sony Ericsson's failure wasn't a lack of ideas, it was a lack of agility. In the tech world, being half right is the same as being wrong. They had the hardware, but they ignored the software revolution until it was too late. The story of Sony Ericsson is a reminder that in the world of technology, no crown is permanent. You can be the Nokia killer one day and a footnote in a history book the next. They gave us the colors, the music, and the first taste of what a smart life could look like. Before we go, I want to ask you, if Sony Ericsson launched a Classic Edition W800 today with modern Android, would you buy it? Or is the era of the fun phone officially dead? Thank you for watching this deep dive on Master Plan. If you enjoyed this journey through tech history, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We have plenty more master plans to deconstruct. Until next time, keep looking ahead, but never forget the tech that got us here.